We're going to officially start the meeting, and I'll pass it over to Dr. Rebecca Renato for the welcome and remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvaro, and welcome everybody. We're really happy to have you here today. I think everyone who's attending is aware of the fact that the upcoming Global Refugee Forum presents a real opportunity, not only to take stock of where things have gone over the past 4 years, but also to think really strategically and intentionally about ways that we can work together to advance movement towards 15 by 30 and also opening access more broadly when it comes to both post-secondary education and other opportunities for refugees. So we have a pretty packed agenda today. We're going to try to keep the meeting to 90 minutes instead of 2 hours. And we're going to first hear from some UNHCR colleagues on the multi-stakeholder pledge and the different strategies that are being used around these multi-stakeholder pledging approaches, both when it comes to the 15 by 30 broad pledge, as well as the Complementary Pathways and Third Country Solutions pledge that is broader and connected between education and labor. Then we're going to also hear from 4 different colleagues who pledged in 2019 and hear a little bit about their process for developing those pledges, their ideas of how they then move from the pledging process into unfolding the programming and really mobilizing those pledges over the course of the following 4 years, and what they're thinking about for this upcoming GRF. So we'll end by putting all of you into breakout rooms, and there'll be a moderator in each room, and we'll invite some conversation around what your initial thinking is from your institutional perspectives, and also invite you to think about others you might want to connect with and the kinds of support you might need as you develop your ideas around the pledges that you're going to be making in December. I guess the only other thought I would leave you with is one of the things we've been thinking a lot about within OSUN and across our network is remembering a few key points as we develop pledges. First, that the pledges should be quantifiable. Second, that they should be trackable. And finally, that joining between organizations and very different stakeholders and doing a joint pledge can actually be beneficial. So those are the 3 kind of rules of thumb that we're keeping in mind as we encourage our partners to develop pledges. I'm going to turn it back to Alvaro, and I'll see some of you in the breakout rooms.
Perfect. Thanks. Thank you very much, Rebecca, for those welcome remarks and for remembering everyone why it's important to be involved in these conversations. As mentioned by Rebecca, we're going to start hearing more about the multi-stakeholder pledges and the state of pledge of play by the colleagues of UNHCR. And said that, I would like to pass it over to Amanda, which is going to get us through the multi-stakeholder pledge and complementary skills-based pathways. So Amanda, over to you.
Thank you, Alvaro. So hello, everyone. Amanda Stovall. I'm working at UNHCR in the Resettlement and Complementary Pathways Service, focusing on complementary pathways. So we're working with Anna Gecht, which I'm sure many of you know. So we are kind of building the skills-based complementary pathways pledge, kind of allowing for these similarities between labor mobility and third country education pathways, some of the same obstacles and challenges, while also kind of giving nuance to, you know, the differences between labor mobility and education pathways. So within this pledge, it's speaking to the 3rd objective of the GCR, which focuses on third country solutions. And maybe one thing to point out is that they've kind of redeveloped how you can submit pledges to the GRF this year that allows you to kind of tick, you know, multiple pledges when you're developing a pledge that you're pledge may speak to. So if it will speak to, the Education 15 by 30 pledge, if it will speak also to the skills-based complementary pathways, you'll be able to kind of tick on both of those, pledges, so that this allows for both teams to kind of be tracking the pledge and to really ensure that, we're able to follow all of the pledges that are relevant to our portfolios. I guess speaking with this, just a few things when you're developing pledges or considering how to refine your pledges. We really want to look at all elements, to look at things holistically. So thinking about, the immigration side, how can we help, navigate these immigration complexities? How can we maybe adjust or improve legal frameworks? How can we, address issues that maybe push refugees out from being included in different programs, as well as also the integration side of things. How can we ensure that after arrival, refugee students are supported in the ways that will ensure that they can flourish and be successful. So I think also just the unique challenges that refugee students face, whether it's about, documentation, language testing, issues related to their connectivity, things like this. So just thinking through all the different steps and elements, and when you're designing your program, how this will be relevant. So I think when we're looking at the skills-based complementary pledge, kind of the overarching goal is that we want 200,000 refugees to arrive on labor mobility and third country education pathways in the next 5 years. So this is kind of what we're laying out. We're really trying to work with all actors, across the board, see where we can develop synergies, see how we can, kind of coordinate this matching element. I think we're also happy to provide feedback about any ideas, or if you're trying to really struggle through the language or drafting of a pledge, happy to provide guidance on this or review any ideas that you may have. So I think, this is all from my side. I'm happy to answer any questions or support in any way necessary.
Thank you very much, Amanda, for that overview in the skills-based complementary pathways pledge. If anyone had questions, please leave them on the chat, or you can also do them now or afterwards the meeting. As mentioned by Amanda, she and her team are available to follow up on any questions on the skills-based complementary pathways pledge. Said that, we're gonna move on to the overview also of the 15 by 30 multi-stakeholder pledge. I think Arash is going to be the one that's going to be supporting us on that presentation. Arash, you are there?
Sure, thanks, Alvaro. Hi, everyone. My name is Arash. I work with UNHCR Education Section based in Copenhagen, primarily focusing on tertiary education. So supporting our global strategy campaigning in partnership. I might just quickly share a short PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so just very briefly to discuss, I'm going to talk about the 15 by 30 Global Pledge on Refugee Higher Education and Self-Reliance, and also to build up on what Amanda was talking about in terms of some of the support that we're looking for complementary pathways. As you might know, in 2019, we came together with a lot of our partners where the enrollment data that was available to us on refugee access to higher education was about 1%. So for those of you that are not aware of the 15 by 30, we set the target in 2019 to get to the 15% of refugees being enrolled in higher education institution by 2030. Right now, the figure is at 7%. So within the 4 years, we have managed to get about 6% higher than we were. But to keep the momentum up, I think we need a lot of commitments and support. And for that, we put together this global pledge with a lot of the partners and institutions like Open Society University Networks, Times Higher Education, FinChurch Aid, WUSC, and many more, to look at what sort of commitments we can mobilize to ensure that we are quite steady getting to the 15%. And when we look at this pledge, at the first Global Refugee Forum in 2019, we had about 40 pledges, or 18% of the pledges of all education related were on Tibet. So just that also gives you a bit of context on what was interesting to a lot of the commitments that were made by different stakeholders. The 15 by 30 focuses on 5 main pillars. I know potentially a lot of you are aware, but there will be a lot of focus on Tibet, technical vocational education training. We have a subgroup that is focusing on that with ILO, GIZ, and Finchurch 8. The other piece of it would be on connected education, on DAFI scholarships that we have, on complementary education pathway that Amanda touched based on, and majority of it also will be looking at policy shifting at hosting countries or hosting institution. So how do we increase opportunities for scholarships wherever refugees are based? There are a couple of priorities for us for this year GRF, and that would be looking at how do we highlight contribution of hosting country institutions, making sure that we shed lights on some of the work that they are doing and how do we learn from them. See new partnerships that are formed between higher education institutions, especially when it comes into the partnership that are between institutions from the global north and the global south. And also looking at multi-year funding for some of the refugee-led initiative. And in this case, for us, it's more focusing on supporting some of the refugee student-led initiatives that we, together with our partners, are also supporting. And lastly, to position post-secondary skills and higher education as a gateway to local solutions. So really looking at what are those pathways when it comes into internships, coupled up with mentoring and other opportunities post-secondary. These are some of the examples that you can look at. I'll post the link to the Global Pledge and some of the guiding documents that we have put, policy guidelines on higher ed pledges, or anything for different partners, member states, and stakeholders. We have, highlighted a couple, but for example, you can, the suggestions that we have with our partners are to create new third country complementary education pathways, or for example, looking at establishing that new partnership that we mentioned with technical institutions, and ensuring that policies are also inclusive, that refugee students pay the same tuition fee and have access to the same opportunities as host community students. And we are working on a global solidarity pledge that for the universities as well. So how do we encourage universities to join that pledge under the 15 by 30 and a couple more? But I will pause here and potentially we'll discuss it more in some of the breakout rooms with you all.
Thank you very much, Arash. Thank you very much also, Amanda, for the state of play around the multi-stakeholders pledges and also sharing the priorities and the pressing topics that we should all, as a higher education community and also complementary pathways community, looking at for pledging at the next Global Refugee Forum. I also saw one of the questions in the chat. Thanks, Amanda, for answering that, since I think it's something that could cause some confusion. Well, said that, and after hearing the multi-stakeholder pledges, how they work and what they aim for, we're going to pass over to the next section where we're going to hear the experiences of multiple stakeholders that pledge around complementary education pathways in 2019, their progress and their intentions, or more than intentions, ideas to pledge in the upcoming Global Refugee Forum in December. Said this, I would like to pass it over to Anik, which is going to be presenting the first good practice. Anik, I don't know if you're over there.
Okay, bonjour. Hi, everyone. I will be short. I know we have 7.30 minutes, okay, but I won't be long. First, if we pledged some, made some pledging after the 2000 Forum, in three pillars of yours, okay? One for the hosting more refugees in national universities, the second for connected higher education, and the last for complementary education pathways. Of course, today I just want to talk about the last one, right? It's complementary education pathways. Okay, actually, it's the one on which we have made more progress than the two other ones, so it's a good thing. It was just beginning in 2019, and now we have launched with UNHCR France a real program of education complementary pathway called UNIVER, to host about 20 students every year coming from a country of first asylum. Okay, so we did this already. Well, there was pilot program before, but since 2 years, so it's now we are opening the third year, and we pledge on this one. So in 2024. So we will launch a call, especially on the platform opportunity of UNHCR, but also in all the HCR operation in various countries, Middle East and Sub-Saharan Africa mainly, to invite applications to come for a master in France, mostly in French, but some also in English. So we've opened today, this last year, and will go on this year, some master in, open to the program, some master in English, which made a few students from Afghanistan to apply. I mean, refugee in Iran, mostly. So what can I say more? We are help for this program. It's a multi-stakeholder program with many partners, with a lot of help from our government, I must say. 3 ministries are involved. Ministry of Higher Education, which co-finance grants. Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which helps a lot with visa and travels. They pay all the tickets, and they help for visa. And also Ministry of Interior, which help a lot for visa. You know how it is, especially nowadays. And they are very good to help for visa. Things are going well. We so with the first 2 promotions, and of course it's not so easy to adjust to a master in France, even if we have a bachelor's in another country, especially countries which low income and which are not isn't exactly the same way of teaching. But globally, it's going well, and we hope to develop, but we will be very glad to exchange with other countries. We know that Italy and have similar programs, okay? And we have already talked with them, but we wish we can exchange more. I will stop and answer any question when you want.
Thank you very much, Anik, for sharing your expertise on pledging for the Global Refugee Forum, for also sharing that sometimes the forum could also be an important to expand other programs other than the pathways that we're specifically speaking about today. And also encourage everyone, if they have any questions, to leave them in the chat. Said that, and that Anik connecting actually the next speaker, mentioning the Italian program. We're going to hear now from Professor Marco Borrachetti from the University of Bologna and their experience with the forum and their intentions for this year.
Thank you very much, Alvaro. Thank you for the invitation. And it is a pleasure to be here and to see so many persons interested on it and present online. It is also an emotion for me. I wanted to share a few slides. And I think that you are able to see it. And just because the time is very important here, I want to start my presentation very fast. This is the, so first of all, what is my role? I am an associate professor in European Union law, but what is important is that I am delegate of director for the University Corridor for Refugee Students. And from this point, I got more, let's say, I was delegated more because now I'm working with all the refugee students. And this is the first, a very beginning. I want to show you the first example of the added value of this type of activities. But about the project, the pilot was in 2019. Now we are at the 5th version and the 6th is on the way. At the very beginning, students were host in Ethiopia at the very beginning, then with the 4th edition in different countries in Africa, and the 5th edition the same. So there was an expansion of it. It is important that the project focus on master program, so they have already bachelor program, and the point average is, according to the Italian scale, is 24/30, that is around 8/10, that it means that there is anyway a selection, and the first selection is on their motivation. The 4 steps are, there is first of all a consultation, the project is run, let's say, or coordinated by UNHCR Italy. Then there is a public call, and there is an assessment of application and selection of candidates. Then there is the pre-departure part that is about language, visas, and the cooperation with the embassies and the arrival of the student, and then attendance of the master and the graduation. Obviously, on the critical, maybe critical point or positive point, I will be later, but it was showed as a good practice, and we have different objectives. The first one objective was the easy depression of most countries, and the idea to provide higher education and to organize not just higher education, but professional development, networking. It was very important, helpful for the graduates to obtain employment and durable solution in Italy. In this way, easy the pressure doesn't mean exactly that the pressure on quantitative issue, but also we should consider to give this person a different chance, so also a qualitative issue. Enhance refugee self-reliance, because there was the support, the assistance to the student in their academic path and their development of their professional skills, and again to arrive to the graduation. What is important to know is that for the logistic issues, sometimes the majority of the situation, they were not perfectly on schedule at the university, not just because we are late, but imagine that the embassy needs more time to issue a visa, or because they are anyway in a different environment. So it is very important to support them to go ahead to pass over the situation where that could be obstacle to their academic development. Expand access to third country solutions means that the system it is helping persons that are in need of international protection, but is also a way to cooperate, to find a way to create legal pathways to the, in that case, to Italy or the safer countries or European Union country. What is the final result? Support condition in countries of origin for return in safety and dignity. This was the goal at the very beginning. I have to tell you that unfortunately, some of these goals were not more possible, not just because of the student, but because of the condition in the countries of origin or in the countries of departure. So, for example, the first UNHCR was from Ethiopia. That at that point, Ethiopia was the country where the European Union countries were putting all the attention to create a development. And while the students were here, a war happened in Ethiopia. So this is not the student responsibility or our responsibility. But just to show you in a few seconds, the added value of the program, how the program increased from 1 to 5, from 6 to 60 scholarship, total addition 202 scholarships, 39 Italian universities. We were 2 at the very beginning. More than 1,500 applications submitted. At the very beginning were 30, but then in the last edition are 557. We are covering, the project is covering now 11 countries of first asylum. That means also having giving more chances, but also having more candidates. And then increasing the number of students from 6 to under 73. And in the last edition were 52. I want to stress the importance of the last line. In the first edition, we didn't have female students. In the 5th, we had 12. In the 4th, we have 13. So now from 0, we have 39 female students. This is a point where we should work more, for sure. But again, we cannot deny the situation, the condition of the partner. So in some situation, the number of candidates and the cultural background has gave us less candidates, female student, that male student. Is not. This is something that we should target more in the future. What about the future, meaning the new edition, renewing some spot, university financing and higher education support. At the moment, it's just from the university, not from the state. The support of recognition of prior experience or language skills and learning. Inclusion path is more important. Refugees engagement, multi-stakeholders engagement. This is something that we should continue. But what is the expanding part? The number of scholarship and countries of first asylum, the language inclusion, to have better procedures. So administrative procedure facilitation on entry and stay, job opportunities after the graduation. And this is via the engagement of private sector and then sustainability of all this action. This is the last part is very important, that arrive thanks to the analysis, to the job we did in the last edition, because at the very beginning we were focused on the master, the graduation, but then after it's a question mark. So this is the point. That's all. Always happy to answer to questions, obviously, but.
Perfect. Thank you, Professor Marco, for first of all sharing the good practices that have come from UNHCR and also from the University of Bologna, and that also I think they have been shared in the good practices portal of UNHCR. And I think this is a good moment to share that if any of your institutions have a good practice to share for the coming GRF, there's a portal to do that. We will share in the chat. And well, I'm just moving on for the sake of time. I understand maybe there's a lot of questions, but well, we heard from from Anik from the University Consortium. We also heard from Professor Marco from the perspective of the university. Now we're going to move on from the experience of a government. We're going to pass it over to Adina from Comara.
Hi, I'm going to share a presentation.
We can see it, Adina.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Sorry. Is it complete? Complete the screen?
If you want to leave it that way, I think we can see it. Yeah, it's readable. There's the full screen.
Great. Well, hello. I'm Adina Tejadilla. I work for the Ministry of Interior in Mexico, in the area COMAR, Mexican Commission for Refugee Aid. And we are very happy to be here to share our pledge, our 2019 pledge, and tell you how the things are going now. Well, first of all, I wanted to talk about the first Global Refugee Forum, where the government of Mexico pledged to support the access to complementary education pathways. After this, we signed a multi-part memorandum of understanding between COMAR, the Minister of Interior, the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Mexico, the UNHCR, and the NGO DIME, to formalizing the actors' commitment to implement 2019 pledge and outlining the step to do so. But what was this commitment? We focus on creating higher education opportunities in Mexico for young refugees recognized in other countries. We are doing this through the ABESHA program, which consists in access to higher education opportunities in the best universities in Mexico through a scholarship program. The initial commitment was to transfer 100 refugees to Mexico, and we are working on this. This scholarship program covers financing, a visa to travel to Mexico, and a year of integration that includes an intensive Spanish learning course and academic regularization, medical insurance during the study stage, monthly stipend to cover basic expenses, and academic, psychosocial, immigration, and medical system support. We have 6 steps on this. The step 1 is identification of candidates and selection of profile. The UNHCR identifies potential refugee candidates. The step 2 is profile review and educational evaluation of candidates. ABESHA will review the profiles and evaluate the education needs of candidates. The step 3, validation of candidates and documentation issuance. This is made by the Mexican Ministry of Foreign Affairs to bring the students here to Mexico. The step 4 is refugees travel to Mexico. This is DIME and ABESHA will receive and accompany them in their education progress. Step 5, the recognition of refugee status by COMAR. We will review the cases, and if we found that first country of asylum don't give protection, we will validate the refugee status in Mexico. And finally, step 6, incorporation into university program. Young refugees will be enrolled in higher education programs through scholarships granted by private university. In addition, we have been, Mexican government has been assistance by Canadian government by technical assistant partnerships for COMAR to strengthen institutional capacity aligned with Canada's feminist international assistance policy and the sustainable development goals. Alinea International was hired to implement the project on behalf of the Canadian Minister for Global Affairs. We have been conducted expert visits to Canada and Mexico to supervise the complementary education pathways procedures, which brought as a result an operational protocol to define process, stages, and responsibility for each stakeholder. Finally, the results that we have achieved till now is that Mexico has received 26 students of various nationality who have been benefited from the Complementary Education Pathways program. 4 students will soon arrive from Kenya. As I mentioned before, an operational protocol has been issued, which aims to define roles and functions of all the key actors involved in the management and implementation of the Complementary Education Pathways program in Mexico. And finally, strengthening links with National Migration Institute and the Minister of Education to facilitate the issuance of documents to students. Thank you very much, and we are here to reply any question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adina, for your presentation and for sharing how the collaboration of different ministries, NGOs, higher education institutions in Mexico are expanding education pathways. We're a little bit over time, so I will pass to the last speaker, last but not least, Michelle Manx from WUSC. I know we're a little bit over time, Michelle, but use your complete 7.5 minutes. No worries.
Thanks, Alvaro. I thought you were going to tell me to keep it brief. Just sorting out. Whoops. There we go. All right. Good morning, everyone, from where I'm from. I'm Michelle Manx. I work at WUSC. WUSC has been implementing an education pathways program for several decades. So our engagement with the Global Refugee Forum was really to use it as a moment to generate new commitments from the campuses and to improve our practices in Canada, as well as to share some of our expertise with other countries. So we made 3 pledges during the 2019 GRF. One was to expand education pathways and develop welcoming communities in Canada alongside our partners at universities, working with our campus groups that are based at the universities and colleges and CEGEPs across Canada. The second was to champion education pathways and establish standards and improve global practices by supporting other countries. And then the third was to ensure that refugee voices are included in program design and program implementation. So I'll just share a little bit about what that looked like. So at the 2019 GRF, we worked with 71 different Canadian post-secondary institutions who pledged to expand education pathways for refugees on their campuses and also take action to help create more welcoming communities. So this looked like increasing already their participation in the student refugee program. And so far, as of 2022, we increased the number of students that we bring to Canada each year to 172 from 127 in 2019. The other piece was trying to ensure that the commitments that post-secondary institutions made were sustainable. So working really closely with our campuses to put in place sustainable funding mechanisms and to think through what that can look like by campus, who all have their own contexts and potential funding sources. So looking at longer term memorandums of understanding with the universities, student levies, and increasing those and increasing the student contributions to the program. Another activity that we proposed to the campus groups was to reach out to other institutions who might have the potential to welcome refugee students. So whether that's in their own communities where there's other institutions that don't yet welcome refugee students, or across the country with like-minded institutions or similar types of institutions. We made a commitment to improve admissions policies for a broader group of refugee students. So often Canadian institutions were making special exceptions for students that were coming through our program. And what we wanted to do was see those institutions expand those to other refugees that were either in Canada or wishing to be admitted to a campus in Canada, so that those same admissions policies and flexibilities could apply to a broader set of students. And then finally, a big component of what we do is to raise awareness on campuses about refugee issues, about access to education for refugees, and why education pathways are so important, and improving access to higher education for refugees is so important globally. And our role in all of this was to support those campus groups through that work. The next one was to offer technical assistance. So we put some targets in the interest of making our pledge measurable. So we pledged to support at least 4 different countries or networks within different countries to either develop or expand their pathways by the next GRF, which is this December. And I think we'll have achieved that. Another commitment was to convene or co-convene meetings on education pathways. And so since the last 2019 GRF, there was the establishment of the Global Task Force on Third Country Education Pathways, which we now chair. And then developing resources. So we can share the resource page of the task force for those who are interested. But we made a commitment to put organizational resources and human resources towards the development of these types of minimum standards and other tools that are helpful to the development of education pathways globally. And then finally, our third pledge was to ensure that those with lived experience are informing and helping with the delivery of our programs. So you'll see any of the work that we do now with refugee populations globally includes advisory groups, and we're shifting much more towards direct delivery by refugee-led organizations or refugee leaders in their communities. So in the lead up, we're still figuring out our pledges as an organization for 2023, but the role that we've been playing with the Canadian Campus Network is again one of mobilization. So we did a presentation to our national group of campus committees in August to introduce the GRF, to introduce the different pledges. We developed a page in our campus portal, which I'll share in the chat afterwards. And one of the things that I think is important is that we help to translate the language from the education pledging framework, which can be quite technical, so that's more accessible to the campus groups and the networks that we're working with. So when I'll send the link, and if you have a look at our pledges or at the recommended pledges, you can see that the language has been adapted, and our role will be to collect the commitments of the campuses and then retranslate that back to the pledging framework so that it can be monitored over the next 4 years after the GRF. We also created a form this year within our CRM, our customer relationship management system, to make it easier for campuses to pledge, but also for us to be able to track those pledges over time over the next 4 years, because we found it was really labor intensive to try to track those without having this mechanism in place. So we'll have that for next time, and hopefully it'll be an easy reporting process for the campuses across Canada to input their activities for the year. So that's how we're engaging our campus network. And then as an organization, I'm sure we'll pledge something related to improving the infrastructure in first countries of asylum that better enable refugees to access education and other third country solutions, whether that's developing initiatives at lower levels of education or just making information more available to refugees about complementary pathways and how to navigate them. We'll continue to support the policy development and operational mechanisms that help refugee students access immigration. We'll continue to share our expertise, and then I'm sure we'll have a pledge related to labor pathways. So that's it. And I'll share the links to all these things I mentioned in the chat in a second. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Michelle, for that quick but complete presentation on the efforts of WUSC since 2019 and the plans for 2023. We're a little bit over time, so we're going to move on to the next section, to the next exercise. As you reviewed in the agenda, we're going to divide us in breakout rooms to exchange and discuss good practices, ideas, intentions around pledging for complementary education pathways. We're going to have around 35 minutes to discuss with multiple stakeholders in groups that will be facilitated by colleagues supporting the task force. So said that, I'm going to break out now and see you in around 35 minutes. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I think, yeah, all the groups have been closed and everyone has returned. Okay, great. I hope you all had interesting discussions and exchange of ideas in each of your breakout groups. For the last section of this webinar, we will be hearing from the facilitators of each of the breakout rooms, one of the biggest highlights they heard around their groups, but also I want to share and open the space to the reporters or any other participant that would like to share or add anything. Said that, I would like to start with the group number 1, which was the group of Arash, I think.
Great. It's great to be the first one. We had a very interesting conversation. We had different people joining our calls, so civil society networks, universities, university networks, and the representative from different government departments. What we discussed, I think it covered on a couple of general highlights. One, the Global Refugee Forum process is complicated and fairly new for a lot of different country institutions that would like to engage, or at least for our colleagues in different institutions that are trying to galvanize more support. Because the process is new and it's complicated, it's quite hard to come up with a commitment that those partners would agree on. But they seem to be a lot of interest in bringing on board, for example, university networks that are already committing to the Sustainable Development Goals or the refugee higher education. The other challenge is based on what UNHCR puts out on making sure that the commitments or the pledges are concrete, time-bound, and quantifiable. And that comes again, with a lot of with having a diverse range of partners within your network or within your constitution, then it becomes quite hard to narrow down the commitment so everyone agrees on. So I think that was the other interesting piece. Again, the piece on what pledge actually means and how can we formulate it. So there were a lot of requests to share templates or examples of previous pledges, which we have, and we will be sharing again, I think, with the broader group to help give you an idea for different stakeholders. There are language or guiding notes for universities, for the governments, for civil societies, and etc. The other thing was to coordinating these efforts. How do we narrow it down, whether it should be at the country level or it can be quite broad, looking at policy change, or does it have to really say how many students, for example, we will be impacting, or how many recipients this sort of pledges or our commitment will have. Then the last thing in terms of the resources and what might be needed, I think we've already mentioned, but having templates and feedback on the pledges that are being made was recommended. And I know that as the task force and also as UNHCR, we are happy always to share feedback on the pledges that you are intending to create. And also, again, to share some of the templates and languages that we have put together to help you and your institution to pledge. So I think that's it for now. I'll stop. I'm not sure if anyone from our group would like to share anything else. Or maybe the last piece was about tracking. Again, when you pledge, especially with a very diverse group of people in your network, and then the tracking part becomes quite challenging. And how do you follow up with the other partners who committed and basically said that they will support the pledge collectively? That was the last one.
Amazing. Thanks, Raj. I'm going to move forward for the sake of time. And then if any other person of your group had any follow-up questions, it can reach out. Thanks. Rebecca, your group was next one.
Thanks. I think I would just highlight that, we had a number of very thoughtful pledges in the making, spanning several different areas, advocacy-oriented pledges that were trying to address things like visa issues and immigration issues, pledges that are more focused on moving students to institutions, and pledges that are leveraging knowledge production to raise awareness around things like pathways. So I think I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Rebecca, for the short but clear message. I'll pass it over to the group number 3, which was facilitated by Aki.
Sorry, Michelle's gonna report back on this. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Aki.
Thanks. We had similar conversations in our breakout groups. Some of the pledges that stakeholders are considering are around transition of students to employment and supporting those activities, advocacy on accreditation, on ensuring the legal pathways are available, and expanding the number of institutions or the number of students that are welcomed through pathways, improving language lessons and supports that help students access admissions to universities where the language of instruction is not the same as their native language, engaging other campuses and convening discussions to promote education pathways, either nationally or regionally or globally, and then expanding the number of students that are brought through different pathways. In terms of challenges, we talked about funding and resources to be able to implement these initiatives, access to study visas, and then also challenges engaging the senior leadership of post-secondary institutions who may be a little risk adverse in making commitments and having to do a lot of work to help them understand what pledging means, and that they can make a pledge that's aspirational and work that they're working towards commitments, but no one's going to hold them legally accountable for it. And then, in terms of resources, the resources that are needed are linked to the challenges. So policy supports, funding, and coordination with governments. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Michelle. Next group at the end, and facilitated by Andrea, I think.
Yep.
Was that?
Yeah, it was. Thank you. We had a very diverse group of actors that represented many regions in the world, so it was very interesting. Also at very different stages in the process. So I think one of the reflections that we had was in terms of how to translate maybe what is being done or what is in the process of being done into pledges, acknowledging that also some initiatives might have already started implementation of some activities, but has never shared those experiences or activities globally. So how to reflect things that are maybe already in the making. Again, acknowledging the need for financial support for also pledges to move forward. And also another interesting idea that came out at the end was related to the need to have regional convenings or opportunities to share with one another's and to be an example for your peers or other stakeholders in your region to inspire pledges that are relevant to the context in which those are taking place. So I will leave it to that for now.
Perfect. Thanks, Andrea. And lastly, group 5 was facilitated by Jessica.
Yes. I'll just share a couple. We had actually several pledges around increasing the number of students coming through a particular program. One was someone an organization who had pledged before. And so they were looking at how to increase the number, but also not just the number of students, but the number of actors involved, having learned what was needed and kind of how the program could be improved by having particular people at the table, government bodies in this case. Another program was a brand new one, and one of the challenges that they listed, but also others, was around getting all of the partnerships in place and having just the kind of necessary delays when you're forming a multi-stakeholder program. And so it's not exactly a challenge, but it is just something that takes time, and was the reason they weren't quite ready to pledge yet, but are still working towards doing so. One other theme was around access to consular services. That was brought up as well. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you very much to all the rapporteurs and facilitators for sharing the insights and highlights of each of the groups. Before moving forward or finishing with the session, I would like to ask if there's any last question or thought from the participants, from the exchange of ideas you had in your groups, or from what you heard in the rest of the session. Of course, if there are not, well, we will always leave also the contact information for you to reach out. Well, said that, with this, we come to the end of the pledging webinar on complementary education pathways. I want to thank all the speakers, all the facilitators and note takers of the session. I just want to share a couple of follow-up steps and activities that they're going to be happening related to education pathways. First of all, you should all have filled Google Forms in each of your breakout groups. sharing some contact information and thoughts around what we are thinking related to pledging or initiatives that are linked to complementary education pathways. With that information, we're planning to follow up bilaterally with the stakeholders that have expressed some interest or working around education pathways. So that's going to be a first next step to follow up with participants. And also, we think it's also relevant to share additional resources related to the pledge intentions or pledging on complementary education pathways. The Global Task Force at UNHCR a couple of months developed a pledging framework on complementary education pathways, which I'm sharing in the chat. And in that framework, you will review that there are multiple pressing topics around what to pledge on education pathways, challenges, and barriers. And within that document, you will also find an expression form where you can go and express your intentions on pledging for education pathways, right? So there's the resource. And lastly, I would like to share about some activities that will be held in the sidelines of the Global Refugee Forum. Specifically by December 12th, there's going to be an event called Education Campus, which is led by the UNHCR education team. And there's going to be specifically a complementary education pathways panel, where there will be updates about the continuation and new pledges around education pathways. And also to hear about the upcoming programs and challenges that could be innovative for the upcoming 4 years on education pathways. There will be more information available once there's more clarity about the whole sessions. And we, of course, will let know the community about any other updates related to panels, sessions, workshops on education pathways. Said that, I think those are the updates that we have to share with you. Again, thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and thanks, everyone. I see, Anna, you want to share something before finishing? Go ahead.
Yeah, just a very, well, 2 small points. Thank you, Alvaro, and thanks, everybody. Just wanted to mention that if you would like to discuss some of the pledging ideas with us at the HCR side, we're happy to support and, of course, work with Alvaro and the chairs of this task force on those pieces to make sure that they correspond to the requirements of the pledging framework as it exists right now. I think those resources will also be shared out there. If you prefer to do so more directly, please feel free to reach out rather than fill out the form. So whichever really works as such. And the second piece that I wanted to mention, that there is under development a calendar of all things GRF prep in terms of different pledging clinics, which also includes labor mobility. And as Amanda mentioned in the very beginning, there's of course a lot of interlinkages when you look at education and labor mobility, particularly as they relate to migration processes that are involved in both. We don't have the dates yet, but there's also 2 pledging clinics similar to this one that are being planned in that space, and we will be sharing those. They will also be available eventually on the official calendar. So if you're interested, that's another perhaps resource to consider when working on your pledges. With that, thanks so much. And
thank you, Anna. Well, if there's nothing else to share, thanks again, everyone. Have a good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you're connecting, and happy to stay connected in the upcoming month for the Global Refugee Forum. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you.
thank you.